All right, everybody, let's finish up Chapter 4 and go into a discussion on compact discs. The advent of recordable compact discs allowed for archival storage and quick retrieval of legacy sounds specific to the station, such as IDs and commercials. Compact discs are fairly sturdy, but CDs are not immune to damage, like scratches and cracks and warping and that sort of thing. So you have to have a certain amount of care in taking care of CDs, such as not putting them in places where the sun can get at them and warp them and things like that. You want to take care when you're pulling in and out CDs, try not to scratch them up and things like that. But again, they do provide a pretty decent way to store your media when they are taken care of properly. Different types of recordable CDs and DVDs include the CDR format. CDR devices record onto a compact disc permanently, but then you have the CDRW that you can rewrite onto a particular CDRW several times to re-record over what was already there. CDR discs can be played on a standard compact disc player, but not all CD players will play back CDRW discs. Thus, CDRWs are not a good choice for audio duplication. However, not all CDRs will play on older CD players as well. So it's not a 100% universal sort of method for playback on just any old CD device. So that's something that you do need to keep in mind. Operation of a CD player. Most CD players display the playing time and total time of the disc in the player. And you can also, on some, have a countdown feature that it sees how much of the track is remaining or how much of the disc is remaining to play. Because CDs can hold more than 60 minutes of content, they can be useful for distributing programming like a 1-hour music special. Most CDs that are available these days will hold either 74 or 80 minutes of content. If a radio station uses CDs regularly, it will often wire the start and stop function into the audio console so that the CD track that has been queued up will fire when the operator presses the on or start button of the console. This basically turns the on button on the console into the play button for the CD device for studios that are set up that way. It's another reason why you want to know the functions of your studio when you walk in there, so that you know whether or not you can turn something on without it automatically playing on you. Specialized function CD players are useful for live DJ usage. These functions include changing the master tempo and pitch of the music, scratching, seamless looping, and other functions that enable a jock to intermix different musical segments. These can also be really helpful in studios where they still use CDs for playing back music. If you want to kind of increase the intensity or the liveliness of a sound that's coming through, you may want to pitch up the CDs that you're playing. It number one will take them less time to play through, but it also kind of creates that much more intense sort of sound for the listener. Solid state drives and flash memory. Solid state storage devices, or SSDs, do not contain any mechanical or moving parts, making them reliable for file storage. These devices use a silicon microchip as the basis for file storage. So everything is held digitally within the SSD. One of the side effects of the SSD, though, is that it has a more limited shelf life compared to a mechanical hard drive, assuming that the mechanical hard drive's moving parts do not cause the device to fail. Solid-state drives can be used to replace standard hard disk drives because they provide faster access to data, though, and it also does so with low latency. It doesn't take as long to call up a file. They hold some distinct advantages that make them excellent choices for recording and playback. Because, again, solid-state devices provide faster speeds for recording and retrieving files. Because it's a digital system as opposed to a system with mechanical parts, it can very quickly access the information that is called up. It can also save audio data in many different formats, which mechanical drives can as well, but you do see the solid-state drives in various forms in more and more applications these days. Flash drives like SD cards, CD cards, USB thumb drives, these are also solid-state devices, but they record and retrieve information more slowly than an SSD that is embedded inside a computer. Some of the advantages of these types of devices: they're a convenient way to move data from one device to another. Many flash drives provide instantaneous startup on flash tracks, making queuing unnecessary. You just hit the button and go. These flash drives can be controlled by computers or by remote control devices, and there are multiple playback modes that allow single file playbacks or programming of sequential tracks. So you can kind of build your own playlist, if you will, depending on the device that you are accessing these particular drives from. Now, the digital cart machine. Digital cart machines have the standard record features built into the unit, including some editing capability. These are basically kind of simple digital audio workstations in many facets. It is sometimes possible to use a file transfer protocol program, or an FTP, to load files into the machine from a digital workstation connected to the station's internal network, which means you can do some quick editing on the fly sometimes with these sorts of things, and then you can retrieve and save files to go in through the network. Many machines now feature web-based controls so that they can be operated from any location. It's very easy nowadays to have a setup where you could be on your laptop at home and you remote in to a computer in the studio or to a web page-based application that controls particular devices and be able to do things in that sort of way. Most digital cart machines display program elements like music cuts, announcements, commercials, and some of these machines can develop a playlist function that enables a jock to set up material in a queue to be able to be played sequentially. So you kind of have this ability to be able to program in advance a series of elements that you want to air at one particular time. Most units now feature hotkeys that enable an operator to assign a specific button to a frequently used audio cut, like a station ID or a stinger. And there's an example of one of these in your textbook. Depending on how the cart machine is programmed, it may trigger several sequences in a row. And to do that kind of a setup is very often called live assist. It's a situation where you manually set up the order of different things that you want to happen, and then once you have that set up, all you have to do is press one button, and then that series of events will take place in the way that you've programmed it. Remote inputs. A hybrid connects the station console to a standard analog telephone line. So the hybrid is basically the device that we use to connect phone callers into the studio. Usually they use some digital processing that separates the announcer's voice from the caller online and provides some dynamic equalization, giving the listener at home a quality experience. So it provides a consistency of audio level. Many times the volume on a telephone call is rather low compared to other elements that we have in the studio. So this process basically makes the telephone it amplifies that audio so that we can make better use of that audio for on-air purposes. Telephone hybrids are used with the mix-minus function of the console, and you'll recall that we talked about mix-minus back in Chapter 3 when we talked about the console as a whole. Some other types of remote connections would include satellite feeds. Programs received by satellite come down from a satellite downlink. We've talked about that previously as well. And you don't see this as much anymore, but it is still out there for certain applications. ISDN, Integrated Services Digital Network. This is basically a high quality sort of phone line type of system, so that this particular quality phone line is going to bring high quality audio in from a network or from some other source where you need to have that high fidelity audio. These days, a lot of computer applications can replicate that well enough so that the expensive features of ISDN are not necessarily as needed, especially given the cost of them these days compared to what you can do through computer networks. The console operator can use the queue capability of the audio console to listen for pre-cues when you're receiving material from ISDN or satellite or something like that. But usually the station also has a high-quality synced studio clock so that the operator will be able to ascertain the exact in and out points for remote broadcasts. Satellite services publish schedules. They'll publish schedules, I should say, and these are called billboards or program clocks about when breaks are scheduled into the program service. So basically, you look at this sheet that the satellite service provides for you that gives you the times of when different segments start, when there might be network commercials that come down, when local commercials are allowed to be played and how long you have for those and that sort of thing. So whether you have an actual published schedule or you have that program clock that represents the hour, the operator is going to have a sense as to what to expect that is coming down from the satellite or from the ISDN service. One other note that I want to share with you, more stations are relying on internet connections again to conduct interviews and even stream and programming content. Such an internet connection needs to be of high quality and provide low latency, though, in order to be effective. There are some things that are coming down the pike that do fulfill that purpose better than they have even just a few years ago. So it is making it a much more viable option, especially if you do have the ability of a rather reliable and speedy internet connection. Once it becomes much more ubiquitous to have that sort of connectivity, it's not unfathomable to think that it could actually completely replace some of these other ways of receiving remote broadcasts. But that's going to do it for Chapter 4. You know the drill at this point. Make sure you complete these notes and the study questions that were sent to you. Get them turned in. Fill out the survey on Blackboard. And when we come together, we'll discuss how these things are impacting the way that we work in the studio, or we work with the studio if we're out of the studio in some cases. And yeah, we'll have a lovely little chat when we get together.